Hi, thanks for taking the time to talk to us today. Could you please briefly introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the research you presented here?
Thank you. I'm Wallace Brownlee. I'm a research fellow from the Queen Square MS Centre and a neurologist at the National Hospital. And I've been doing research looking into the prognosis of people with early MS. And I've done a long-term follow-up study of people who had their first symptoms of MS 15 years ago. And as part of a previous research study, they had MRI scans done around the time of their first symptoms and then after 1 year and 3 years. And I followed them all up at 15 years and looked back at the scans they had around the time of their first symptoms so that we could try and predict how they're going to do 15 years later, and particularly which MRI factors were most important in the development of secondary progressive MS.
So what is it in your opinion sort of the most sort of conclusive marker that you spotted in early diagnosis and that led you to the conclusion that this is probably a very good indicator of like secondary progressive progression?
Well, when we went back and looked at the early MRI scans, what we found is that spinal cord lesions, which we know can be helpful in making a diagnosis of MS, seem to have a very strong prognostic impact. So people who had spinal cord lesions on their initial MRI scan, particularly those who didn't have symptoms from the spinal cord, they seem to be associated with a higher risk of developing secondary progressive MS. And we think this might have important implications because not all people have a spinal cord MRI scan done around the time of diagnosis, and we think it can be helpful in providing prognostic information.